Yeah,
You know?
so there's a breakdown in communication happening somewhere in there. And what I'm hearing out of this example that you're sharing is maybe the person in the break room, they're not being fully honest. They're not giving the true condition of the picture because they're holding back their voice. And what they're doing then is creating the meeting after the meeting.
Right, we all been there.
Those are so detrimental. And I would have to look into a little bit further into that team. But what might be happening there too is that there might be a lack of openness towards the leadership level where they are not really listening. They're not listening without reservation. And again, that doesn't mean you have to agree with somebody, but saying, okay, I hear what you're saying. Here's my perspective. Here's my honesty on that side of things.
The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the producer and not necessarily those of WKTV Community Media.
Hello, West Michigan. This is Grand Tap Media Business TV. My name is Pamela Keim, your host. The spirit of the show is to introduce West Michigan to all the businesses, nonprofits, individuals that can help us thrive in our lives. Well, today we have a great topic and a great guest. And I heard about her through a personal friend of mine, and I just had to have her on my show. We are going to be talking about honesty. And she has a great book called called No Honesty, and she's going to share more about that. But we're going to be talking about when is it best to be honest, or when do you know the line of being too honest or not saying your honesty in a loving way that causes conflict. And maybe some of you know people in your office, it's just like, I don't want to deal with this person. I don't want to be, if I was honest and I really told the truth, I'd probably be escorted out the door. We have all been in that situation, believe me. Or maybe you're serving on a board right now and you'd like to be a little bit more honest on how you like things run. Well, Grace Gavin is going to be here, and she's going to give us great tips on how to be honest, how to improve your communication, and how she can help your company if you're dealing with communication issues. So I want to welcome Grace Gavin to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Pamela.
Thank you so much for being here. Just love your book. I am so glad that I was given this, and my friend has told me all about it, about communication, because I do believe today, especially since 2020, when things have really gone off the rails, where people just feel fearful of being honest, and they feel like its difference today, I think, is that somebody can tell their truth, but they expect you to repeat it back to them, that you confirm that truth. And a lot of us are sitting there like, well, I may see a situation at work or a problem in the society that has to be addressed, but I don't really agree with you on how to solve that problem. And that's what I saw in the last 5 years, is that people are like coming up with solutions. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to follow that. But I wouldn't dare say that to some people. I would just listen. I'm like, even though I don't agree, right? Or I disagree on how to get to a solution. And I think many people feel that way today. But I do think that there is hope, because I think a lot of people are tired, and I hear this all the time. They just feel free now, and when a turn of events have happened, and just say, you know what, I want to start speaking my truth. I want people to know who is Pamela Keim, and who is Pamela Keim in this situation. And can I be honest enough where I'm not being shamed? Is that the right word to use?
I think shame can be a big part of what stops us from being honest. But I think what you're talking about, maybe what you're touching on, Pamela, is a big part of the book, but it's not in the title because it's not as attractive to people. And so we have this equation that we like to think about this when we're wanting to get to real communication. And that is, real communication is open plus honest. So you hear the phrase open and honest all the time. Those are, in my definitions, two very different things. So we've got honesty, which is being truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. That's the your truth side of the equation.
Right.
And that's exploded in the last few years, which is, I think, great. It's fantastic.
Right.
But what we're missing a lot of the times is the openness side of the equation. And it's a little bit different than how we're thinking about it right now, because we think about openness as being, I don't know, an open book, transparent. That's all on the honesty side of things to me.
You're right.
So to me, openness is listening without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause for somebody else. And I think we are severely lacking in that as a society. And to be clear, and to touch on a little bit of what you talked about, being open to somebody else does not necessarily mean that you agree with them,
Right.
but it is listening to them. And we've lost that skill, and I think we lose it more and more every day if we're not clearly focused on it and building it, because it is hard to do. It's really hard to do, to sit across from somebody else and say, okay, whatever my agenda is, whatever my needs and wants are, I'm going to put those on pause while you're speaking, and then I'm going to have my response from there. Not to try to pre-populate what I'm going to say to try to win the conversation. I think there's a lot of that.
Or I gotcha.
Winners versus losers.
Right.
Exactly. And that's, sure, that might feel good for a little bit, but what progress does it really do for us?
Exactly, and it's not like and I want you to share why you wrote the book and what brought you to write the book and about your co-author there. But it's not like I don't want to understand where they're coming from, because everybody's model of the world, where they come from. I mean, you've ever heard the statement, we're every age we've ever been? Mm-hmm. And I might say something that has triggered you, or you feel like, well, nobody listens to me at home, but by gosh, I'm in the workplace and people are going to start to listen to me, or whatever, if that makes any sense. But, you know, the point is that I want to listen, but I don't want to be forced to repeat back that I agree. And that's
Right.
where people feel like I just have to go along with this, because it's a toxic situation. And if I don't, I could get in trouble, because I guess you want to say there's more them than somebody that might go, you know, have you ever thought about this? I mean, and you want to share where you're coming from without getting into trouble, is what I'm saying, Grace. So I want you to talk about why you wrote the book, how you got in it, and did something happen to you that you started seeing that people were like, I see myself going like this, well, you know, and you're looking to make sure anybody's hearing you, because you don't want them to construe what you're saying is a negative thing. But I think if you talk things out, and if I was talking to you about something, you might bring in a different perspective, and I might go, well, I really never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I've had so many conversations like that, and some difficult conversations where it's like, have you ever thought about it from this perspective? And I talk and I have conversations with people who are on completely different sides of any issue with me, and it's really hard to stay in that conversation, because it's easier sometimes to say, well, you have no idea what you're talking about. You've never thought about it in these different ways, and to dismiss somebody. But we are in a society and in a world of 8 billion people. And if I
Right.
continue to dismiss every person that does not agree with me, all of a sudden I'm alone and I'm by myself and isolated. And that's been declared a public health epidemic.
Well, echo chambers.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
You
And then we
probably
don't
see that.
learn anything. And it's terrible. And so,
So the book.
Yes, the
no
book.
honesty, and I know that this is no, and an honesty. So what's the story here?
there's so many stories that have brought this book into the world, between Ken and myself, and Ken and myself together, working together and separately. But really where it stems out of is we were working with leadership teams. We're helping them implement a proven system that thousands of businesses have done. But there was a rare percentage of those teams that would implement the system and just take off like a rocket, and it was amazing. But there was a lot more teams that didn't, and they just struggled. And looking at that, the question was, why is this happening? And so
Yes.
digging into it, researching it, it was really the team's ability to communicate that made the difference. You can give somebody all the tools in the world, but if they cannot, with their team, communicate at the highest levels of openness and honesty, then everything else is going to be so much harder. We spend 88% of our weeks communicating with other people. And if we're not doing that well, it's going to be a lot more difficult. And so just some stats for you and for those watching is that right now, one of our practices in there is the pursuit of honesty assessment. And that's where we're tracking people's ability to be honest and to be open, specifically in the way that we talk about it. And so we're tracking an average openness right now of 66%. And you might hear that and think, that's not terrible, but it's not great either. That means 34% of the time we're just not listening to people. Now I'd have to bet it might be a little bit higher in certain teams that are toxic.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then on the honesty side of things, it's a little bit better because it's easier. Honesty is the me, myself, and I side of things, but we're tracking an average honesty of 71%. So if you and I are both along those averages and we spend 5 days a week together, that means that we're only accessing real communication together 22% of the week. And if we're working together 5 days a week and we are only hitting that level of real communication 22% of the time, can you imagine how much harder our work gets? Yes. And then we expand that out to a 5-person team. And this is where it was amazing to me, is that a 5-person team only reaches real communication, which is 100% honesty and 100% openness. That's the goal. That's what we want to work towards. They only hit that 2.44% of the week. And so when you look around at your team, and if you have if your team's bigger than 5, it gets so much worse. And then you wonder, why are things taking us so long? Why are projects off track? Why are we not as effective as we possibly could be? Well, it's because our communication is not there. It's not to the level that we need to have. If we don't have that solid foundation, that basis of communication as a team, everything else is so much harder.
Well, okay, so companies, and I can see where I see the value of this so much, because you are with your coworkers, your colleagues, more than you are with your family.
Yes.
And if you have this pit in your stomach when you're already on your way to work because of the inability for people to communicate, right? And you know that you communicate, way you communicate verbally, way you communicate without saying a word. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then, of course, then you have the written, and we all get bombarded when we're in a corporate with emails. Who gets copied? We just talked about that. Who gets copied and where?
Yep.
And I had where I deal with board members. I'm making sure, and I know their level of officers and stuff, making sure I'm putting them in order and stuff. And that's a lot of work. And then who I'm, copying. Okay. And so, and I hear this a lot too. It's like, oh yeah, well, they just put me in a line of everybody else, and I'm the CEO, and I should be copied. Do you understand what I'm saying? So then all of a sudden you instantly think, well, that person doesn't respect me, but without her even, or she, or him, knowing the protocol. So then all of a sudden you have all these feelings coming up when you're around that person, and you feel disrespected. And so this is not communicating. And how do you address that? And I deal with CEOs a lot because my husband, I told you before the interview, my husband is a former CEO, so he was around them all the time. But what role when you go in is you're dealing with getting together, and it's like, look, we want to accomplish this, and we don't know why people are just like backstabbing and blaming, and does that make? And why we can't get this where we're joyful that we've made this much strive, but there's always somebody in there, oh, well, we should have been this far. I've dealt with that too. We're out there celebrating. We did such a wonderful art. We were this far into a project. Well, that, and I'm in the break room, and all of a sudden I start hearing, I don't know why we're celebrating, because we're we should have had this done like 2 months ago. 2 months ago? Does that make sense? Are you dealing with it? Okay.
It does.
And we know who those. All of us will tell you. We all know the people that put those little seeds.
Yep.
And then you're like, oh, I just thought this was we were just celebrating.
Yeah. So there's a breakdown in communication happening somewhere in there. And what I'm hearing out of this example that you're sharing is maybe the person in the break room, they're not being fully honest. They're not giving the true condition of the picture, because they're holding back their voice. And what they're doing then is creating the meeting after the meeting.
Right, we all been there.
Those are so detrimental. And I would have to look into a little bit further into that team. But what might be happening there too is that there might be a lack of openness towards the leadership level, where they are not really listening. They're not listening without reservation. And again, that doesn't mean you have to agree with somebody, but saying, okay, I hear what you're saying. Here's my perspective. Here's my honesty on that side of things. And that there's not that give and take between the two there. And then sometimes people are they're afraid to be honest because nobody's really ever been honest with them. And it's very strange to see that, because what we really want is we want to know what's going on. We want the full picture, but sometimes we don't want to hear the full picture. And as leaders, we need to step into that, be a little bit more brave, I think, and say, hey, team, what is your perspective? Where are you seeing this from? Because it doesn't have to be the direction that we go towards with our teams, but when they have the ability to be honest, then we're getting a better picture of what's really going on. Instead of hearing it in the break room going, oh, I don't know why we're celebrating because we're 2 months off track. well, then some information is missing there. We don't have access to the true condition. And in the book, we define the true condition as the reality of where we're really at, the facts and the figures. And we, I think, lack a lot of reality a lot of times because we don't have people who are honest. And a lot of times we don't have people who are honest because we don't have people on the other side who are open to it. Or maybe we do, but we've not fully established that. We've not made that wildly clear. In the book, we share the 6 practices because we want to make communication simple, tangible, and implementable for teams.
That's good.
And so the agreement is this simple script that we have proven out. We use it within our team. We use it with all of our clients, with even our vendors. It makes an amazing difference. But how the agreement goes is this. Will you agree with me on how we're going to communicate? I want you to be 100% honest, meaning I want you to be truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. I promise I will be 100% open to it. I will listen to you without reservation. I'll put my needs and wants on pause for you. And in return, I'll be honest with you, and I ask that you be completely open to it. That's the entire agreement.
How long does it take? I mean, really, to be honest, if I was sitting there, I mean, I would have loved to hear that. But I have been, I will tell you, being in the corporate world for many, many years, it's just like I was burned by being too honest. Right? And saying a little bit, and I'm not talking, I did something happen to my child, just something where, you have, I guess you're concerned about a situation. Yeah. And you don't, and maybe it's perceived as gossip, right? You don't know where that, and I guess we can see where that could be, where you're like, I'm just kind of concerned about, like you're concerned about, I'm really concerned about Grace. She normally is pretty on top of it. She seems like the last couple meetings, she's just like, withdrawn and she's not communicating. Does that make, and I don't, and then you're talking about, and then all of a sudden it gets through the whole office, and pretty soon you're sitting here in a meeting and it's like, well, didn't you say, well, Pamela said this about, and you're sitting there and you're like, and then you're hurt because you're like, why don't you just come to me? Yep. I told you I'm taking care of my ailing mother or my dad just got diagnosed with Alzheimer's and I don't really know. Yep. All I know is you're different.
Yeah. And I think that what you kind of introduced there is what I see happening a lot with my clients is this conflict that we're not dealing with in a direct way. So there's a couple different ways that you can deal with conflict. And the most healthy way is, if you had that thought in this scenario, is to bring it to me to say, hey, you have not been participating in meetings in the same way. What's going on? How can I help you? Or what do we need to change that to get it back to where we were or where we need to be? That's the most healthy way to do it. Doesn't happen nearly as much as it should.
I just learned that in the last 5 years. Yeah. Talking when I was a young leader in an organization, nobody taught me what to look for.
And then the other 2 ways that I see the conflict coming out in the not so healthy ways is the drama triangle. So that's like, imagine if there's somebody else sitting here and you go say, hey, I'm concerned about Grace, what's going on here? Well, now we've introduced a triangle where that person has to decide, are they going to keep the trust with you and keep that between the 2 of you? Are they going to bring it to me and address the issue and break trust with you? What's going to go on there? Right. And then it multiplies a lot of times in organizations.
And I didn't say concerned, Grace. I said, well, I would say something years and years ago. This is the young Pamela, right? Well, she's not even engaged at the meetings. Yep. She's not even communicating. I mean, is she checked out? Is she looking for another job? Does she hate her? Do you understand?
Yeah, and then all of these worst assumptions that go on that happen because we as human beings, we can handle tough conversations, good conversations, ugly conversations, because that's giving us more information. What we can't handle is no information, because then those assumptions start to happen. And then the last way that conflict that I see happening is that we hold that internally. So we can have it healthy between you and I, we can introduce a drama triangle, which has a lot of problems, or we hold it internally. And in this scenario, if you're like, I don't know what's going on with Grace, I'm not going to say anything, but now there's this tension between us, and I don't know why, you know why, but you're holding on to it, and it's creating a level of toxicity within yourself that's not helpful and burdening you and disrupting our relationship. And I see that happening a lot of times when we could just go to each other, and when we have the agreement in place. This is why the agreement is so fantastic, is because we encourage it to be a living, breathing agreement, to say, all right, we have this in place where we're going to be 100% honest and 100% open with each other. Hey, Grace, I see that you're not as engaged in meetings. What's going on? We need you to participate. And then I can share with you what's happening. And a great example that I want to share with you, Pamela, is this actually did happen to me. So this is interesting that you bring this up. But about 4 years ago, my dad passed away, and it was a couple of months after that. And Ken and I, my co-author and co-founder of No Honesty, we were about to start a meeting, and he said to me, "Hey, but before we start, something's going on. I don't really know. I feel like you're just not engaged. You're not here." Quite literally, like you're saying, this happened. And I looked at him and I said, "My dad just died. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm really going through. This is the first time that I've had such a major loss in my life. And I want to be here and I want to continue to do this work, but it's weird for me right now. And everything that I look around reminds me of my dad." And what Ken did there is he chose to have that healthy conflict between the two of us, not introduce the drama triangle or holding it internally, so we could actually work through it. And we understood each other at a deeper level at that point. And I said, "Look, there are going to be some times that I'm going to need to leave the office. And I want you to know that I'm here, I'm dedicated to what we're doing, but there are some times that I just can't be here. And I'm just going to be bawling my eyes out. And I need to do that to go through this grieving process, to not hold it in internally and have it affect me for years and years going on." And the clarity that we got out of that, it was probably a 10-minute conversation. And it was tough. But we understood each other so much better, and he knew where I was coming from at that point, and we could better understand, all right, what is it that we're going after as a company? What can we handle in this next month, in this next 90 days? We had a fuller, clearer picture of the true condition. And you asked me before about like, how honest can we be at work? And I think the question there is, how honest can you be has to relate to how it will relate to the goals that you're going after. And so if you have a big, huge project as a team that you're going after that's going to require a lot of your time, but you have maybe it's an ailing parent that you're caring for, or your kids are on summer break, that's part of the equation. And that's part of your team needs to know that to make the best choices, to not have you performing at a worse level than what you could if the hours looked different, or if they were reduced, or if you had, I don't know, there's so many different ways that we can think about it.
To be, to work, and I'm dealing with that right now. There's a lot of people that I deal with, their kids are all home. And so we're having Zoom meetings and whatever, and then, they're promising, "I'll get this to you in a couple days." Well, we'll have to deal with that, right?
Yeah.
It didn't happen, but I get it. Their kids are home.
Yeah.
And they have to do that. All right, if we can talk for hours, I just know this, Grace, and I so want you back on the show to talk more in depth of all the questions my husband wanted me to ask, which I didn't even go, and I have questions here that in my mind, but I think your book is vital, especially if you have young leaders coming in, that you maybe you're starting a business and you're just starting getting new people there, and how to be communicate. It is vital. I will tell you, being part of Toastmasters International, check it out. It's about public speaking and leadership. Communication, how to read a room, how to say things kindly. We have them grows and glows, we call them, right? And you want to grow because you want your leaders in your organization to be able to run their team and their staff be able to go to them and where those boundaries are, okay? So I could talk about the book forever. I could talk about it. Will you promise to come back on my show so we can talk
absolutely.
more? Okay, so can you, before we wrap this up, is there anything we can finish up this interview that can help and that we didn't cover?
Yeah, I think the most important part, a question that I get a lot of times is, well, what if my team doesn't want to do this, or my team wouldn't be on board with this? And there's two solutions that I find out of that. The first one is tough, and it might be that you're not on the right team, or you don't have the right team around you. And you have to look at that and consider, are these people that are really dedicated to learning and growing with me? Now, that is a really tough thing, but before you ask yourself that question, ask yourself the question, does my team really understand what kind of communication I want? That I want this open and honest communication? Have I made that wildly clear so that there can be accountability around that and conversations when that doesn't happen? Because there is not the education out there besides this book and the work that we're doing now.
Nobody gives it to you when you become into a leadership role. They'll tell you how to, delegate and hire people, but they don't tell you how to communicate until it's too late.
Exactly. So the question is like, if you're asking yourself, I don't think my team would do this, have you educated them about that? First question. And then the tougher question, if you have, and it's really, really clear, which most people have not, even if you think you're clear, you should probably at least say it one more time. Then the question is, do I have the right team around me, or am I on the right team?
Right, and it's really good to have people, I guess we want to say this term today, have your back, to know that what your intention is. We're all on this project, whatever we're doing, this company, we're moving it to the next level. Everybody's going to have certain things happen, but just know I got your back if you are honest with me.
Yes.
Like, my kid is, homesick. I don't know. I had a bad weekend. I didn't get, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And, you can let that go. You have to have that conversation. But to say, okay, she had a bad weekend, we'll give her a couple more days, we'll get it all together. But a lot until all the stuff, the gossip and she's not doing her job or he's not doing your job. But, and then after a while, you just come to a meeting and you feel like, people feel different. That makes sense. And everybody's like, what just happened? And it happens like that.
Yes.
It's like lighting a match, because everybody gets self-preservation. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the DISC. Is that right? The personality, how to communicate with people. I think it's a DISC thing I had to take years ago, and if that's still valid today. And we're going to talk about victimhood and how they control the situation in the workplace, where I can't. We'll go more in the depth that I've dealt with that too. Why I can't even compete with this. I didn't come from that world. That makes sense. And how people bring their home communication into work, and how to deal with that, but and how to be honest and vulnerable without crossing the line of giving out too much information. That's always the fine line. It's like, is this appropriate for work?
Yeah.
If that makes sense. All right. So how can they get the book for people who want to have a Christmas, a holiday reading? And I know it's on Audible. I'm so excited about that because I'll be able to listen to it on my way, running from my errands and stuff like that. So how do they get the book? And how can they reach you for more information if they need to have this starting off the January? Let's just start off something different and see if we can make strides in 2025 under communicating better and building stronger teams.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that. You can find the book anywhere that books are sold, like you said. It's also on Audible, ebook. We got all the versions out there. So however you like to consume books, it's out there for you. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a message there. I'm more than happy to answer questions. I love talking about this. I could do this for hours and hours all day long. And then I think most importantly, and I think a really great starting point for leaders that are listening to this, is our Pursuit of Honesty assessment. It's free on our website right now. So that's knowhonesty.com, know.com/assessment. It'll take about 10 minutes. I highly encourage leaders to take that and to have their entire team take it, because what they're going to do is they're going to get the baseline real data on their ability to communicate and then their team's ability to communicate. And we break it down. It's funny that you said your personal life and your work life. We break it down into personal and work life because sometimes we show up differently there, and we need to understand, all right, if I'm really good at this in my personal life but not in my work life, what's going on there? What's the team dynamics that's affecting that?
Right.
Or vice versa. I'm really great at this at work, so how do I translate this into my personal life?
Which is always good.
Yes. And so to then have your entire team take it and start the conversation there to understand, all right, what is standing in our way as a team from being 100% honest and 100% open? And I will promise you will be amazed by what it is that your teammates say.
And I believe that, because you need people to get things done in communicating, and you want people to bring their best. And I so much thank you, Grace, for being here today, Gavin. It was just been a pleasure meeting you and the book, and I'm so excited about it. But want to change your company, you want to change yourself, and you just want, or your family, get the book, learn how to communicate, and people, I'm telling you, people will look at you and I'm like, I can be so comfortable around you. Because what your goal is to put people at ease. If you can put people at ease, believe me, they will be honest with you. So this is Pamela Keim from Grand Tap Media. We wish everyone a fabulous 2025. We will have Grace back because I have tons of more questions to ask her. So take care, everyone. Have a wonderful holiday.